So let me guess why you're here. You got your PSP in front of you, you might have just purchased it used, or you dug it up out of storage from somewhere. You've been wanting to install custom firmware, so you followed along with a Infinity permanent custom firmware tutorial, whether it was written or it was a video. Then you went through all the steps, and when it came to shut down your PSP, you went over, you shut it down completely, you turned it back on, and nothing ended up happening. You got something like this. Well, unfortunately or fortunately, you are not alone. It seems like many people with Infinity 1.0 and less so, but still happening with Infinity 2.0, end up getting a little bit something like this, which is a brick, meaning that you turn on your system, nothing is happening here, you can't use this, you just simply can't do anything. Well, this video is here to hopefully help you all out. Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and today I'm going to hopefully show you all how you could possibly resolve a soft bricked PSP issue that has come from installing Infinity custom firmware. Now, there is going to be several things I'm going to skip over or just not really go into much detail, because this is going to assume that you are familiar enough with the process and you probably either watched or read something about installing Infinity custom firmware. Really, you've just come from another guide and you're looking at what to do right here. So this does require that you have Infinity installed on your PSP. Whether it be Infinity 1.0 or Infinity 2.0, as long as you have Infinity installed. That means if you're doing the Infinity 1.0 installation, you've already created the Infinity custom firmware and you finished flashing it over. If you have Infinity 2.0, that means that you have already run the application to install Infinity on your system. This is to say, if you've bricked your system some other way, this video is really not going to be specific for that. This is only really going to be if you have Infinity installed on the system currently. Yes, even if it is bricked, it does make a difference. Secondly, this is going to be for soft bricked systems. Now, what does a soft brick mean? I'm going to show you this right here. If you turn on your system, pay very close attention to the screen. Let's turn it on. And if you notice, the screen does turn on. You can see that it's a lighter shade of black, which means the screen is coming on. And if the screen is coming on, typically that means you have a soft bricked system, which means we have a much better method of hopefully being able to recover this through software only. If your screen is not coming on at all, I still encourage you to try this out because this is simple enough. However, if your screen just looks like this, even when you turn it on, it doesn't come on at all, it does not power up, you might have a hard bricked system, which unfortunately means you'd probably have to go with a Pandora's battery and a magic memory stick. Now, this video is not going to support that type of method there, and it doesn't work on all PSPs. It works on the 1000 model as well as most 2000 models, but right now it doesn't work on a 3000 or a PSP Go or a PSP Street. So before we get any further into this, let's at least make sure that we can actually get our system up and running, because as you can see right here, if I turn on this system, it seems to be bricked. It looks like a soft brick, but I can't do anything with the system, unfortunately, and I know for a fact this has Infinity 1.0 installed on it. I've tested what I'm about to show you all with Infinity 1.0 and 2.0. I've tried both of them on the system. I've tried doing weird and misconfigurations and missing steps and such, so I have bricked this system on purpose multiple times to test this out. First, let's do a battery pull on our system, and this is going to be for the 1, 2, and 3000 models because these are the ones we can actually pull the battery on. So what we can do is flip our system around, and this is pretty simple. We're just going to remove the battery cover, and we're just going to disconnect the battery physically, just like that for a few seconds, pop it back into place, and then we're going to put the battery cover back on. That's all we're doing right there. Now we're going to actually try and unbrick this system. As you can see, again, right here, we power on the system. It's not doing anything. If I leave it here long enough, it's going to turn off. So how do we end up seeing if we can unbrick this system? Well, it's thankfully pretty simple. First of all, you need to power off your system completely, like what I'm trying to do right here. Make sure the power light is off. Now, this is our first attempt. Hold down the home button, power on the system, and continue to hold down the home button or the PS button. And as you can see, our system is powering up. So our previously bricked system is now unbricked. However, this is not the end of the road. This is just the beginning. We have successfully confirmed that we can fix up this system. Now, if the home button combination does not work for you, there's a few other combinations that might work that I'm going to show you. Now, I say might work because these are all going to be combinations I've seen online. Some of them have worked, some of them have not, and again, I've tested on this system multiple times across Infinity 1 and Infinity 2, so your mileage may vary on this, but I'd recommend you try all these combinations and see which one works for you. So for any of these other ones, we're going to power off our system, and let's try out some others. First of all, one I have seen is holding down the left shoulder button. So hold down the left shoulder button, power up your system, and see if this does anything. Now, from what I can see, the memory stick slot there had a little bit of different activity, but as you can see, it's really not going to be doing anything here. So for me, just holding down the left shoulder button really does not do anything. If any of these combinations aren't working for you, like at this time it should have powered up, you can either wait for this to power off or you can just manually turn it off yourself. Our second combination that we can try is the left shoulder button and the home button. So you hold both those down, you turn on the PSP, and you wait. Now, I know for a fact this one also does not work on this PSP. As you can see, nothing is happening here. So this is going to be another write-off for me. Hopefully it can work for some of you all out here, but for me on this PSP, it does not work. Next up, we can try the right shoulder button and square. So you're going to hold the both of these down, right shoulder button, square, and power up the system. Now, as you can see yet again, the Memory Stick Pro Duo activity light did something a little bit different, but again, I'm not getting any luck here, unfortunately. So this is another combination that does not work for me. Another one here, this one I know does work, is going to be home and the right shoulder button. So hold down home and right shoulder, turn on the PSP, and wait a few seconds. And as you can see, this one does power on the console successfully. So this would be another combination that works. Now I have one more combination for you all to try, and this is going to be the most complex one out of all of them. So let's go ahead, turn off our PSP one more time, and we're going to give this a shot. This one I'm actually going to pull out of the case here because it's going to be a little more complex, but you're going to hold down home, start and select, square and triangle all at once, and then you're going to power on the device. So you're going to have to kind of play around with how you're going to hold this system a little bit, but you really just want to get all 5 of these held down at once, and again, it's going to be a little complex, just something like that works, and then power on your system and wait. And this one's going to work for me. So as you can see, that one also works as well too. So on this system in particular, half of the combinations I have tried have worked on here. Hopefully any of those will work for you, and if none of those combinations work on your system, unfortunately you might have a hard bricked system. Again, this is to restate, if you have a 1000 or a 2000 PSP model, you should hopefully be able to use a Pandora's battery with a magic memory stick and be able to revive your console. If you have a 3000 series, a PSP Go, or even a PSP Street like this, I'm using this as an example because you simply cannot replace the battery, like do a battery pull or pop a Pandora's battery in here. Unfortunately, if one of these systems, one of the ones that I have mentioned, is hard bricked, you might have to go through the route of doing a motherboard replacement on the system itself if you still want to save that same console. I know it's a little bit unfortunate, but again, just try all the combinations, maybe try them a few tries, but if you're not able to get that to work on your system, then that's about all you have there. It is worth noting, I just want to say one discrepancy for Infinity 1 versus Infinity 2. Infinity 2 does work across all models of the PSP, so I would have more hope for something like a PSP Street model like this. However, if you installed Infinity 1.0 on a Street model like this, it is probably going to be a hard brick at that point. I at least made it clear in my tutorial, and I'm sure there's many others that state that the original Infinity does not work on a Street model. So if you installed the original Infinity 1.0 on a PSP Street, unfortunately that is probably just going to be a hard brick for you. So now great, with all that out of the way, let's say you're one of the lucky people who was able to get your dead PSP working again with any of those button combinations I had provided. Well, great, now we can continue on. What we're going to do is we're going to completely reset our PSP's firmware. We're going to install the original 6.61 official firmware, and then we're going to install Infinity 2.0, install custom firmware, and then enable Infinity 2.0. It's very important we do it in those steps right there. So for that, we're going to need a few things. You're going to need your PSP, of course. You're going to need a battery, make sure it is fully charged. And I'd also recommend hooking up your PSP to a wall charger so we do not lose power during this process. You're also going to need any type of storage on here, so whether it be a Memory Stick Pro Duo or you're using a micro SD to Memory Stick Pro Duo adapter, that's completely up to you. We're also going to need a PC on hand as well as a method of accessing the storage on the PSP. So whether you want to take out the storage itself and access it on your PSP, or if you want to use a mini USB cable and just go over to settings, USB connection, and hook up that way, that is completely up to you. But for that, we are going to need to access the storage on the PC, and we're going to need to download the firmware pack that I will have down below in the description. So let's go ahead and continue this on our PC. Down below in the video description, there is going to be a zip file I want you to download. So go ahead, click on that link and download it somewhere you can easily access it. From there, you're going to want to right-click the zip file and extract it using whatever extraction software you wish, and then open up the folder that it creates. And here there's going to be several different folders, and I'll show you what we'll need. Now make sure you have your PSP storage accessible, and this is assuming that you already have it formatted, set up, and all ready to go from a previous tutorial. But if it's working on your PSP, it should work here just fine. Now what you'll need to do is go into your PSP folder, and if you don't see any of these folders, make sure you create them manually. So go into your PSP folder, go into your game folder, and this is where we're going to copy a few things. Now, these are all custom firmware files and folders that I've been working with already, so I'm going to choose to delete them. This is completely up to you, but it would make it a little bit easier if you delete any sort of custom firmware or Infinity files that you've already copied over, just so we can start with a clean slate. In the firmware pack, you're going to take the Chrono Switch folder and copy it. Now in the PSP game directory, you want to paste in Chrono Switch. Next up, we need the official firmware, which you can find from that same zip file that I told you all to download. So go into the OFW folder inside of that zip that you've extracted, and now you need the firmware for which version of PSP you're using, or model. So if you have a 1000, 2000, 3000, or Street model, you're going to use this one that is labeled as such. If you have a PSP Go, you're going to use the one labeled Go. Now, regardless of which one you choose, you're going to go into the folder for your specific model of PSP you're trying to unbrick, and you're going to copy out this PBP file. So make a copy of it. Inside of your PSP game folder, as you can see here, you're going to want to create a new folder, and in all one word, all uppercase, call it update. Inside of the update folder, you're going to paste in that PBP file. Now we need to rename this PBP file, all one word, all uppercase, call it eboot.pbp. If you do not name that correctly, it's going to show up as corrupted on your PSP. And if you cannot see the full file name there, if you're on Windows, you can click on View and enable file name extensions. So this is exactly how this should look. In the root of your PSP's memory stick, or your storage, you're going to go into the PSP folder, the game folder, and there should be a Chrono Switch folder, which contains an eboot.pvp, as well as an update folder, which contains your 6.61 firmware update. So now with all of that set up and ready to go, we're just going to right-click, eject our storage to safely eject it, and then pop it back into our PSP or go back over to the system after you've ejected this. Back over at the PSP, make sure you have your memory stick loaded up, go to the game section and go to memory stick, press X, and you should have two files here, the PSP update version 6.61 update, as well as Chrono Switch Downgrader. Go ahead and fire up Chrono Switch Downgrader. After a few seconds, this should load in, and you're going to see just some text that you'll need to read and such right here. make sure that you read and you understand everything that is going to be on screen. And once you do, you'll be able to proceed. Once you get to this black screen, just wait a few seconds and you're going to come to the actual firmware update itself. Once the system software update shows up, this is where you're going to need your fully charged battery, and I would still recommend plugging your PSP into power, just in case your battery craps out on you or anything else happens. But either way, once you have it all set up and ready to go, you can hit start. We're going to go ahead, accept the terms of service, and then press X. At this point, you want to put your PSP down. Don't interrupt anything, don't pull out the memory stick, don't let it lose power. You just want to wait a few minutes for this to install the 6.61 firmware update. So awesome, the update has been applied. At this point, press the X button and wait a few seconds for your PSP to restart. And here we go. Now, if it has restarted successfully, congratulations, you no longer have a soft bricked PSP. However, this PSP is not modded in any way. It is completely stock yet again. So we can go down to Game, Memory Stick, and at this point we can delete both of these applications. So you can go ahead, hit triangle, go down to delete, and delete the update, and then do the same with Chrono Switch Downgrader. There we go. So now we're going to do the same thing. We need to remove our storage or hook up our PSP to our computer in some way, and we need to transfer over the files we need to actually modify the system. And I'm going to be very specific about the steps on that, because this is an operation where it's easy enough. However, it's also really easy to mess up and brick your system again if you either miss a step or you just don't do it in the right order. I'm going to explain it once we get to it. Now back at your computer, make sure you have your PSP storage plugged in, go into your storage, go to PSP, Game, and there should be nothing inside of this folder. If you have that update folder and the Chrono Switch folder, that means that you did not delete them previously, so you need to delete them now. Now go back to the folder that you have created when you extracted my custom firmware package, and we're now going to copy over the custom firmware files we need. So first of all, let's go into the Infinity folder, and there's going to be two folders here. If you have, this is super easy. If you have a PSP Go, you're going to use the PSP Go folder. If you have anything but a PSP Go, that means a 1000, 2000, 3000, or Street, you're going to use the standard folder. Depending on which one you have here, you're just going to copy out that folder. I'm going to use standard because I'm using a PSP 1000, and we're going to go into the PSP game directory on our memory stick or our storage device and paste it in right here. Now once you paste it, you are going to need to rename this folder to all uppercase one word update, and that's exactly how it should look. Second, go back to the root of that custom firmware pack, and we're going to go to CFW, and there's going to be two options. There's LME and there's Pro. Now it's completely dependent on which one you want to use here, but you're going to go into whichever custom firmware you decide to use. I'm going to use Pro in this instance, and there's going to be two folders for Pro. If you choose to use LME, there's going to be 4 folders and a few text files. Here you really just need the folders, you don't need the other stuff. Either way, with whichever option you choose, you're going to highlight all of these, copy them out, and now go to the root of your memory stick. That means that you should see the PSP folder right here, as well as like video, music, picture. You should see all of these. Now you're going to right click and paste. If there's any option here to merge files, folders, directories, you want to do that. And just to double check that you've done this properly, you'll want to go into PSP, Game, and you're going to want to see the other folders that you have loaded up in here. So for Pro, it's going to have Pro Update and Fast Recovery. If you're going to use LME, you should have Installer and Launcher inside of your PSP and Game directory. Great, so with all of that copied over, let's go ahead, right click, eject our USB drive yet again, and we're going to go back to the PSP one last time. Back over at your PSP, you're going to go to the Game column right here, and you want to go down to Memory Stick and press X to enter Memory Stick. Now we want to load up Infinity 2. So open this up and wait. Once Infinity 2 loads up, this is super easy. Press X to install, and press X yet again to reboot. Now once your system reboots, it's going to look the exact same as before, but we have the first part of Infinity installed. This step here is extremely important. The next step you want to do is you want to install custom firmware. You do not want to go into Infinity and enable this. I'm really stressing this part because this is how you can brick your system. If you install Infinity and enable it without a custom firmware, you will brick it again. So for this step, we are going to install the custom firmware itself. To do that, go down to Game Memory Stick, and now you need to choose which custom firmware you are using. So if you chose Pro, you're going to want to fire up the Pro update. However, if you are deciding to use LME, you're going to use the LME installer. It's completely dependent on what you want to use. Since I'm going to use Pro, I'm going to fire up Pro update, but the steps are really going to be similar on here. So once this fires up with whichever custom firmware you are using, you want to go ahead and install the custom firmware. So for this, I'm going to press X, wait a few seconds, and now press X yet again to start custom firmware. Fantastic. Now for our final step. We have Infinity installed, we have custom firmware installed, so now we need to enable Infinity. That means we need to go down to Game Memory Stick, open up Infinity 2 yet again, and Infinity is going to look a little bit different here. So you want to press the left button, and you want to press X on whichever custom firmware you installed. So if you installed Pro, you're going to press X on Pro CFW. If you installed LME, you're going to press X on LME. Now because I have installed Pro, I'm going to press X on Pro. It should show up with this right here, and if it does, that's great. Once you have your custom firmware selected, you press right, press home, and press X to exit. So our system is going to restart here yet again. And at this point, I'm going to turn off the system because we're going to first check and make sure that our system is not bricked, and second, we're going to test and make sure that our system has permanent custom firmware, which you're going to be able to see in one foul swoop. So now with all that done, for our final piece, we're going to turn on our system one last time and wait. As you can see, the system is not bricked after doing the installations. It's working just fine. And if we press the select button once our XMB loads up, you should see a VSH menu depending on which custom firmware you chose. So there we go. That is about it. We have successfully bricked, unbricked our system, reinstalled 6.61 firmware, and then installed Infinity, installed custom firmware, and enabled permanent custom firmware on the system. So at this point, I really hope this has helped you all out. Typically, I know with Infinity 1, it kind of had a tendency to randomly brick systems at times, so hopefully this helps some of you all out. And for Infinity 2.0, it seems to be much more stable, and it seems to have really resolved those random bricks from what I've seen. Although, from what I've been seeing, it typically happens with a misconfiguration or performing a misstep when installing this, which is why I was very much stressing the order of operations to reinstall everything. So there you go, your system has been successfully modified or remodified or unbricked. I really hope this helped out a few people. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.